As an Australian, the specter of becoming a republic looms large. It seems almost like a foregone conclusion that it will eventually come to pass. I have two questions that are tied to this subject. First
Well,
one.
let me stop you right there. I'll answer the two questions, but I want to deal with the premise first, because I feel the premise is a false one.
Really?
Yes. I have been hearing this garbage about a republic is inevitable in Australia or New Zealand or Canada or even in Britain all the years of my life, and I'm 60 years old. Uh, if it was going to happen in Australia anytime soon, it would have happened in 1995 when there was a big referendum. It was defeated, and every poll they've got has shown that support for a republic has corroded to a tremendous degree in Australia. To make things worse, it's particularly unpopular amongst the young. The republic is most popular among the boomers. There's a shock, isn't it, that my generation, so stupid in everything else, would happen to be stupid in this as well. What a surprise. The inevitabilism that you seem to feel, this foregone conclusion yappery, it comes from the media. So what do? You work against it. That's what you do. You join the Australian Monarchist League or Australians for Constitutional Monarchy, and you work against it. You don't just take it lying down. Rupert Murdoch, who is the great spirit guide of the Australian Republican movement, my fellow citizen, my fellow American, Rupert Murdoch, the turncoat who gave up his Australian citizenship so he could make more money in the United States, and who continues to fund the Australian Republican movement. That's the spirit of wickedness in the high places that has to be fought. And it can be done, but you cannot presume it's going to happen. You've got to fight it tooth and nail, because if it does happen, the amount of damage that will be done to Australia will be enormous. And part of it is what I like to call cargo cult politics. It's very common in the Commonwealth. Basically, it runs something like this. The politicians look at the United States, where politicians are supreme. I mean, if the last election showed nothing, it's that politicians are everything and nothing else matters. Politicians are supreme in our system. The problem with both Britain and the other Crown Commonwealth realms is that a politician can only go so far. He can't get to the golden ring at the very top. He can't put his rear end in the throne, in other words. Oh, this is terrible for the little darlings. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, some people, especially the stupider variety, they see the United States, they see that up until recently, we've been a big success. And they think, oh, if we have a republic like the United States, we'll be a big success too. Well, I call that cargo cult politics. Why? Because if you remember the cargo cult in the South Pacific, they, during World War II, with their ancestors now, at American direction, built airfields on these South Pacific islands. And the Americans would come en route to various other places closer to Japan, and they would bring not just weaponry, but goodies from lamps, clothes, food, and stuff. And the natives benefited. But then, when the war ended, the planes stopped coming. And that was the rise of the cargo cult, because they figured if they could just build airstrips that were perfect, the planes would come again. Completely not understanding why the planes had come in the first place and how that wasn't going to happen anymore. The deity, the main deity of the cargo cult, by the way, is called John From. Because all the Americans they met were John from New York, John from Texas, John from Washington State, John from Idaho. So those citizens of Canada, Australia, New Zealand, etc., who have this superstitious belief that a republic will make them somehow strong and independent countries, are practicing what I call cargo cult politics. The sad thing, maybe not so sad for you guys, is that just as the American example has given Australian, British, New Zealand, Canadian republicanism whatever strength and believability it had, look carefully at what's happening to us now. Look at the division now. Remember that a president of our sort can only be president of those people who voted for him. He cannot be president for the entire country, even though we expect him to be. He cannot adequately represent the entire country. You throw away the monarchy, and you are begging for disaster. So, what does this mean? It means don't let it happen. The very fact that you're concerned about this question shows you that you should put some time and energy into making sure it doesn't occur. But let's go on to the two questions.
Well, we're going to pivot a little bit, Charles, because you're really on a roll today, and we had a lot of questions after this. But what I'm going to do, just to let you know, we'll table the other questions and let's focus on Australia for the rest of the pre-show, because I'm curious about a lot of things too.
All right.
Before we get to his questions, actually, you said. So the switching from the monarchy to republic for Australia would result in a lot of destruction. Like what?
Well, let's first review what the Australian monarchy consists of, because people don't know, both inside and outside the country. People just don't know how these things work. And civics in Australia is taught quite as well as it is in the United States. That is, it's not. First thing you've got to bear in mind is that the Queen of Great Britain is Queen of Australia separately. Australia is completely independent from Britain. That's been the case in something called the Statute of Westminster, which was passed in 1931. So that the Queen, quote unquote, governs Australia in accord with the advice of her Australian Prime Minister. The Prime Minister of Great Britain has nothing to do with Australia. The British Parliament cannot make laws for Australia. It's completely independent. The Queen is represented in Australia by the Governor General. The Governor General is appointed by the Queen, but on the advice of the Australian Prime Minister. And he exercises all the powers and does what the Queen would do if she were there. The same is true at the state level in each of the states. You have a governor appointed on the advice of the local premier. So, and then you've got the commissioners of the territories who are appointed by on the advice of the Prime Minister. So, what does this mean in the day-to-day? Well, it means several things. When the government decide that they want to put through what we would call an executive order, it's called an order of the governor or the governor general in council. The governor general has to sign off on all those things, or the state governor. Every bill that is passed by either the state legislatures or the national parliament, federal parliament, has to be given the royal assent by the governor general or by the governor. Now, normally, the major political function, because remember the viceroys, the governors general, and the governors do a lot of other social and cultural things like the Queen does. But politically speaking, the governor general is supposed to be above party, and his biggest job is to make sure that there is a party, that the government in power have a majority in parliament. That's his biggest job. And normally, the way things usually work out is that the government loses a major bill in parliament, unless they do have terms in Australia as well. But if the government loses a major no confidence bill, it has to resign because it no longer has a majority of the seats in parliament supporting it. So if that happens, the Governor General has to dissolve Parliament, call for new elections, which is what happens normally. I say normally. Australia, as it happens, is had one of the textbook examples of why the monarchy is so important in the Australian system. They had back in 73, when I was a kid, it was 74, 75, 75, but he came in 73, a Labour Prime Minister by the name of Gough Whitlam. Now, the Australian system is a little different from the British and Canadian in that the upper house has almost all the powers of the lower house, the Senate, it's called. And unlike the others, if you want your budget passed and the government,
You told us this, by the way, Charles, in a pre-show like 2 episodes ago on the reserve powers. The Governor General dismissed him. He wrote the letter. Because I actually, it was such a good segment that I actually uploaded it by itself, and everybody's enjoying it right now, actually.
Okay. Well, then I won't tell the story again. But what I will say is that if he hadn't done what he did, if Australia had been a republic, it would have gone into Never Never Land. Who knows what would have happened? Whitlam would have been the supremo jefe. And the thing is that in the system of that sort, who do the soldiers and the civil servants and everybody else swear allegiance to? They don't swear allegiance to a piece of paper that politicians make their careers subverting, and they don't make an allegiance. They don't swear an oath to for all practical purposes, non-existent people. They swear allegiance to an individual who is above and beyond politics. Her Majesty the Queen, and in time, His Majesty the King. That is who they swear allegiance to. That's where their loyalty lies. And the politician of the moment who, in theory and in fact, uses the royal prerogative to govern the country, he is only a servant. Even the name Prime Minister, that literally means first servant. See, it's not like with us, where the top dog, and I use both words advisedly, is the president, the man who presides, the man with the plan, the boss man, elected by only half or less of the population. No. What's that?
When was the last time the president was elected by half of the population?
Well, probably before my time.
I don't think it's ever. Definitely at least before your time, right? Because like only half of the population votes, right?
Yeah.
Like, so, just that alone.
But see, in Australia, it's illegal not to vote, so everybody does vote.
Wow.
They don't have a choice. Well, it's called freedom. If the people aren't free, you beat them into freedom. But no, it's illegal not to vote in Australia. You get fined.
How do you feel about that?
I'm of two minds of it. I mean, on the one hand, I don't know that it makes for an informed population, an informed electorate. On the one hand, on the other hand, it certainly does force people to notice things. I think the more important is to whether or not Australians think it works, and so far they haven't gotten rid of it. So I suppose they do.
Do you see the United States doing that?
No, I see the United States erupting into civil war is what I say.
No, but I mean forcing, requiring people to vote, because that seems like it would be very pro-democrat.
Maybe not. Americans are funny. If they were forced to vote, the people who forced them to vote might get a nasty surprise.
That's actually true.
No,
yeah.
Yes, it is true. Oh, yeah? Yeah? You want me to vote? Okay, I'll vote. No. Happy now? I voted. No, it's true. That's the way Americans are. You kick them, they kick back.
I love that. No, I know. That's why I'm laughing, because it feels good, man.
It's true. I mean, I don't think either party really wants to force everyone to vote, because if they did, They'd be sorry. So, but the thing to bear in mind about the Governor General, and for that matter about the Queen/King, is that politically speaking, they're like a fire extinguisher. You know, they're good to have around, but you don't want to have to use them. When you do use them, it means that the things are pretty rough. So, as I say, if Australia or Canada or New Zealand became a monarchy, became a republic. Well, I mean, look at the other republics in the Commonwealth. Look at India. Look at Pakistan. I mean, look at Trinidad, Fiji. All of these countries, Ceylon, Sri Lanka, all of these countries, since they became republics, have had very unpleasant stretches of governance. India has been the most stable of them. And every few years, they've got all sorts of problems. I mean, remember when Indira Gandhi was knocked off? And
Was he the
Sikh president.
CEO? Wait, was he a CEO? Wait, who was that?
She was the prime minister of India. She was assassinated. And the Sikh president, because she was assassinated by Sikhs, and the Sikh president had to be guarded 24 hours. Oh, it was a mess. No, I mean, you see that, and that's the sad irony, is that Republicans in the Crown Commonwealth always look to the United States for inspiration. What they should do is look at republics in the Commonwealth so they can see what really happens. Look at South Africa. Look at Zimbabwe. Look at Kenya. Look at Nigeria. None of those countries have benefited from being a republic. Trinidad, Dominica? No, I don't think so, gang. So, I mean, if you really are keen on becoming a banana republic, all you have to do is become a republic and the bananas will follow. They'll drop on your heads. Not to worry.
Well, they're probably not looking at those countries because they're getting paid to look the other way.
Indeed, they are.
I know something about that.
Oh yeah, I know you do. It's called neighborhood watch where you come from. I know all about that. I was part of it.
Okay.
But let's deal with these two questions.
Okay. All right. I have a friend who is in the military and also a monarchist. Should he, if the republic comes to be, stay on in the armed forces, or should he seek to end his career, as he is no longer serving the crown, and take up a position amongst the Commonwealth soldiers of the British Army?
See, this is precisely the problem he should not have to face. And, it's traditional in Commonwealth countries. It was certainly that way in South Africa. For the militaries to simply go along with whatever the civil leadership want. I would suggest that it's very important for your friend and for everybody else in the Australian military that they not be put to this kind of question. They shouldn't have to be. What kind of scumbag politicians would give that question of conscience to the men and women who are willing to die for Queen and country while these morons are sitting pretty and fat in their offices, so that one of them can be president of Australia one day as a retirement job? I mean, you got to remember something. These people were fighting and dying for Queen and country in Afghanistan, then Korea and New Guinea, then the Western Front, and Gallipoli. And those people died for their sovereign and their country, not for a bunch of well-heeled moronic oligarchs. So they shouldn't have to be put to that test. And the best way, I mean, it drives me crazy when you hear people talking about honoring on Anzac Day and Remembrance Day and all that. The best way to honor the dead of those wars, those conflicts, is to make sure that the crown they fought for remains intact. That's how you honor them. Not a bunch of Republican politicians going out about how, oh, gee willikers, they established our identity. Shut up. Shut bloody up. And let me tell you something else. Remember that every bloody politician in Australia, Canada, Britain, New Zealand, Jamaica, Belize, the Bahamas, and all the rest of the realms, Papua New Guinea, the Solomon Islands, Tuvalu, each and every man Jack and Lady Jane of those jackals has sworn by their honor, on their oaths, to bear true allegiance to Her Majesty the Queen and her lawful successors of body. A Republican who swears that oath is a perjurer and a traitor.
Right.
And I'll tell you one other thing about that. A friend of mine, actually a very good friend who's an attorney in Australia, he made me this long, convoluted argument about how the oath doesn't mean what it appears to mean. And I mean, honestly, I couldn't follow his reasoning at all. And the individual, by the way, is Irish, and it's important that you understand that he's Irish. For what I have said to her, I looked at him and I said, pal, I can't follow you at all. But that's not surprising because I'm just a stupid French Canuck. With me, if I swear an oath, I have to try to keep it or die trying. But you have that fine Anglo-Saxon mind. Calling an Irishman an Anglo-Saxon, ladies and gentlemen, is not always the nicest thing to do. You have that fine Anglo-Saxon mind, and you English people are capable of turning yes into no and no and yes. I can't quite follow you. But there's one thing I do hope, and that is that one day I am summoned to testify in court on the opposite side that you're representing. And when they administer to me the oath to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, well, with your elastic view of oaths, know that I'll tell my truth. I'll tell the truth as it ought to be. The truth as it would be if we lived in a better world. That's the kind of oath I'll take, because I know you're so, and you wouldn't call perjurer. You wouldn't do that because of the way you feel about Republican politicians not being perjurers. So it would all work out. And believe me, Officer Clancy would be in your court in an instant like that. Oh, sure, Your Honor. Oh, I swear on 1,000 Bibles. Oh, Your Lordship, it's absolutely true. Whatever Mr. Ganakati says, I absolutely right. Are you prepared to answer in detail? Well, I think he's laid it out pretty well himself, I'll just back it up. Whatever he said, it's true.
All right.
What's the second question?
If, as a loyal servant of the Crown, Australia does become a republic, should I stay and live under the new regime, or should I migrate to another of Her Majesty's realms? Basically, the two questions can be boiled down into what is higher, national or monarchical loyalty?
Should I go or should I stay? Again, it's your country and your crown. It's not for a bunch of self-appointed morons in Canberra or any of the state capitals to decide they're going to change things because they're so wonderful. I hope to God you are never faced with that question. It's what established Canada when the Anglos, the Loyalists, had to decide, do I stay or do I go? A lot of them left. Certainly, if you left for loyalty's sake, I can tell you that you would be a wonderful addition to whichever of the remaining realms you went to. But you shouldn't have to do that because the Queen's realms belong to the Queen and her subjects, not the political class. It should not be for the political class who are creatures who are able to do things that the rest of us can't, like sewer workers, like garbage men, stuff that most of us couldn't bring ourselves to do, and that Her Majesty couldn't, the day-to-day business of government. But it should not be up to them to decide policy, only how to get there. This is the problem, ladies and gentlemen. the political industrial media complex, and you can add academia, in each Commonwealth realm, including Australia, have long ago decided that they want a republic run by themselves like the United States. I've said it now, I'll say it again and again and again. It's your monarchy to defend, your crown to defend. Do not let these utter morons who have never done anything for their country except parasitically batten off it, slop at the public trough. Do not let them steal from you what is yours and what is Her Majesty's. You know, if you'll pardon the vulgarity, to hell with them. Let them go. Let them emigrate to a republic, like Rupert Murdoch did. What I can't understand is why he's still allowed to fund Australian republicanism. He did the right thing. He wanted to be a Republican. He came to the States. The Republicans, if it's that big of a deal for them, let them be the ones to migrate for conscience, not you. It's your country, the way it was the country of your fathers and grandfathers who proved their loyalty in war after war after war. Let the Republicans come to the States. Let them settle down in Detroit or Portland or Seattle, and let them see what a republic is at its best. Let them come to L.A. Let them settle on Melrose or Fountain or Santa Monica so they can enjoy the burned out wreckage of our glorious dream.